I remember the exact moment I realized my marriage was built on a foundation of lies. It was a warm Saturday evening, and my husband David had invited his work friends over for what had become a monthly poker night tradition. I'd spent the afternoon preparing an elaborate charcuterie board, mixing cocktails, and making sure everything was perfect, as I always did. Not because I particularly enjoyed hosting these gatherings, but because I wanted to support my husband's career and networking. That's what partners do, right? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I was in the kitchen when I overheard the conversation that would change everything. The sliding door to our deck was partially open, and David's voice carried through clearly as he laughed with his friends. "Yeah, I've got it made," he boasted, the smug satisfaction in his voice unmistakable. "Megan hasn't worked a day in the 5 years we've been married. She just stays home decorating and planning dinner parties while I bring home all the bacon." The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze, wine bottle in hand, as one of his friends, I think it was Brett, chuckled and added, "Man, that's the dream. My wife's always on my case about her career this, promotion that." "The secret," David continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "is to make them think they're contributing in other ways. Megan thinks she's supporting my career by playing hostess, but really, I just don't want her getting any ideas about financial independence." They all laughed, and I heard the clink of beer bottles. I stood motionless in my kitchen. My beautiful kitchen in our beautiful house that I had designed and renovated myself. The house that was paid for entirely with my money. You see, what David didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask about, was that I wasn't just a housewife with no job. I was the silent owner of Horizon Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the region. The same company where David was a mid-level sales manager, where Brett was in marketing, and where the other 3 men at the poker table all worked in various departments. 5 years ago, when David and I met, I had just launched the company. It was my baby, something I'd built from scratch after developing a revolutionary workflow management software. But I'd learned early on in my career how differently female founders were treated compared to their male counterparts. The constant questioning of my technical knowledge, the assumptions that I must have had a male co-founder behind the scenes, the inappropriate comments during investor meetings. I was tired of it all. So when Horizon started taking off, I made a strategic decision. I brought in Marcus, a business school friend, to be the public face of the company. He took the title of CEO while I retained majority ownership and made all the major decisions behind the scenes. It gave me freedom to focus on product development, without dealing with the gender bias so prevalent in the tech world. To the outside world, I was just Marcus's friend who occasionally consulted. Even our employees had no idea I was actually their boss. I didn't tell David the truth when we started dating because I wanted to make sure he loved me for me, not for my money or position. After we got serious, it just never seemed like the right time to reveal the secret. Then we got married, and the lie had grown too big. I told myself it didn't matter. We were happy, and what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. But as I stood in the kitchen, listening to him mock and belittle me to his friends, I realized the foundation of our relationship was rotting from the inside out. David didn't respect me. Worse, he saw me as a possession, someone he had cleverly manipulated into servitude. I took a deep breath, set down the wine bottle, and walked silently to my home office. With hands that barely trembled, I fired up my laptop and logged into my secure company server. Within minutes, I had drafted 5 emails to the HR director with instructions to be delivered first thing Monday morning. The rest of the evening, I played my part perfectly. I served drinks with a smile, laughed at their crude jokes, and kissed David goodnight when he finally came to bed, reeking of whiskey and self-satisfaction. He had no idea that in less than 36 hours, he and all his poker buddies would be unemployed. Monday morning arrived, and I told David I was going shopping with friends. Instead, I drove to Horizon's headquarters and parked in the spot reserved for visiting executives. The HR director, Patricia, was waiting for me in a private conference room as requested. Ms. Reynolds, she greeted me formally, though I'd asked her many times to call me Megan. I have to say, your emails caught me by surprise. Are you sure about this? These are some significant personnel changes. I'm certain, I said, sitting down across from her. And it's time you knew something as well. I'm not just a consultant or a friend of Marcus's. I'm the majority owner of Horizon. I founded this company. To her credit, Patricia's composure only faltered for a moment before her professional mask slipped back into place. I had no idea, but that does explain a few things. Marcus has always deferred to your suggestions immediately. Yes. Well, that arrangement has served its purpose. Starting today, I'll be taking a more active role in the company. I slid a folder across the table. These are termination letters for David Reynolds, Brett Harding, Jason Knox, Peter Wilkins, and Michael Chen, effective immediately. The severance packages are generous, but I want them escorted out today. Patricia nodded, though I could see the questions in her eyes. May I ask why? David's sales team has been performing well, and the others have solid performance reviews. I considered how much to share. Let's just say I've received information about their character and workplace conduct that makes them incompatible with the company culture I want to build. I'd prefer not to elaborate further, but I trust you'll handle this discreetly. Of course, she said, gathering the papers. We'll process these immediately. Will there be anything else? Yes, I said, standing up. Please schedule a company-wide meeting for tomorrow morning. It's time I introduced myself properly to my employees. I left the building before the terminations were delivered. I wanted to be home when David got the news. I didn't have to wait long. Around 11:30, I heard the garage door open and close, followed by the sound of David storming into the house. I was sitting calmly at the kitchen island, pretending to browse a magazine. What the hell happened? He demanded, his face flushed with anger. I just got fired. No explanation, just a security escort out of the building. 5 years with the company, and this is how they treat me? I looked up, feigning surprise. Fired? Why would they fire you? Your sales numbers have been good, haven't they? That's what I said. He threw his box of personal items onto the counter. And it's not just me, Brett, Jason, everyone from poker night, all fired within minutes of each other. Something's not right. That is strange, I agreed, turning a page in my magazine. All 5 of you at once? It almost seems personal. David paused, studying my face. What do you mean by that? Do you know something? I closed the magazine and met his gaze steadily. What I know, David, is that it's never wise to mock the person who signs your paychecks. Confusion flickered across his face, then disbelief, then dawning horror, as understanding slowly took root. What are you talking about? He asked, but his voice had lost its confident edge. Horizon Technologies, I said calmly. I founded it 6 years ago. I own controlling interest. I'm your boss. Or rather, I was your boss until about an hour ago. He stared at me as if I'd started speaking in tongues. That's impossible. Marcus is a figurehead. A frontman I installed because I was tired of dealing with tech bros who couldn't believe a woman created the platform that's been paying your salary. I stood up, feeling a strange calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. You never asked what I did before we met, David. You assumed I was just a pretty face with no ambition. That was convenient for you, wasn't it? This is crazy, he whispered, sinking into a chair. You're telling me you've been lying to me for our entire relationship? That our whole marriage is a lie? That's rich, coming from you, I replied, feeling a flash of anger break through my calm facade. I heard you on Saturday night. I heard exactly what you think of me, how you've been manipulating me. How you've been bragging to your friends about keeping me dependent on you." I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. The irony is almost too perfect. David's face had gone pale. "Megan, what you heard? We were just joking around. Guy talk, you know? It didn't mean anything." "Actually, I think it meant everything," I replied. "It showed me exactly who you are when you think I'm not listening. And I don't like that person, David. I don't like him at all." "So you fired me? And my friends? Just like that?" His shock was turning back to anger. "Do you have any idea how vindictive and crazy that sounds?" "I fired 5 employees who demonstrated poor character and judgment. The fact that one of them happens to be my husband is unfortunate, but it doesn't change the business decision." I stood up suddenly, looming over me. "You can't do this to me. I'll fight it. I'll sue for wrongful termination." I didn't flinch. "On what grounds?" "I have excellent documentation of your work performance, including the times you've taken extended lunches to meet up with your assistant Jessica." I saw his eyes widen in surprise. "Yes, I know about that too. I'm not as oblivious as you thought." "This isn't over," he growled, grabbing his keys from the counter. "Actually, it is," I replied. "And David, don't forget to take your box of desk trinkets with you when you leave." He stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed the box and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I waited until I heard his car screech out of the driveway before I allowed myself to sit down, my legs suddenly weak. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. "Marcus? It's me. I've done something either very brave or very stupid, and I need your advice." "Megan?" His voice was concerned. "What's happened?" "I just fired my husband and all his friends, and I'm about to come out as the real owner of Horizon." There was a moment of silence before Marcus let out a low whistle. "Well, damn. I guess we're finally going public with the truth, huh? Are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling tears threaten for the first time. "My marriage is over. That's becoming very clear to me." "I'm sorry, Meg. I never liked the guy, but I know you loved him." "Did I?" I wondered aloud. "Or did I love who I thought he was? Who I wanted him to be?" "That's a question for another day," Marcus said gently. "Right now, we need to prepare for tomorrow. The company's about to go through a major shock." "You're right," I said, wiping away a stray tear. "I'll be at the office in an hour. We have work to do." As I hung up, I looked around the kitchen. The perfect kitchen in the perfect house that was supposed to hold my perfect life. It was all a facade, just like my marriage had been. But unlike my husband, I was done hiding behind false fronts. Tomorrow, I would stand in front of my company and show them who I really was. And after that? After that, I would figure out who I wanted to become next. But first, I had a company to run and a soon-to-be ex-husband to deal with. Because if David thought getting fired was bad, he had no idea what was coming when he learned the terms of our prenuptial agreement, the one he'd signed without reading carefully, assuming it was only protecting his assets from me. The irony was almost poetic. Almost. Almost. Sleep eluded me that night as I moved through the empty rooms of our house, now just my house. Each space held memories I was re-examining through a new lens. The dining room where we'd hosted countless dinners. The living room where we'd watched movies on lazy Sundays. The bedroom where I'd convinced myself we were happy. Had any of it been real? I spent hours preparing for the company meeting, crafting talking points with Marcus over video chat. We debated how much of my personal situation to reveal, ultimately deciding to keep it professional. My marriage breakdown wasn't relevant to the company announcement, though rumors would inevitably spread once people connected the dots between my surname and David's. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Marcus asked, concern etched on his face. "Once we do this, there's no going back to anonymity." "I'm sure," I replied, more certain than I'd felt about anything in years. "I'm done hiding." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Morning arrived with a text from David. "We need to talk about this. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage." I deleted it without responding and dressed with deliberate care. A tailored navy suit that projected authority without trying too hard. The woman in the mirror looked unfamiliar, confident, steely, focused. I liked her. When I arrived at Horizon headquarters, the energy in the building was electric with speculation. 5 simultaneous firings had set the rumor mill ablaze. I noticed sidelong glances and hushed conversations as I walked through the main floor toward the conference room where the leadership team waited. "Ready?" Marcus asked when I entered. "As I'll ever be." The company-wide meeting was held in our largest space, with video links to our satellite offices. Nearly 300 employees waited with varying degrees of curiosity and apprehension. I stood off to the side as Marcus opened the meeting. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "I know there have been some unexpected changes yesterday, and I appreciate your patience. Today marks a significant shift for Horizon Technologies, one that's been in the works for some time." He paused, then gestured toward me. "Most of you know Megan Reynolds as a consultant who occasionally visits our offices. What you don't know is that Megan is actually the founder and majority owner of Horizon Technologies. From the beginning, I've been serving as the public face of the company while Megan has been the true visionary behind our success." The room erupted in murmurs. I stepped forward, heart pounding, but voice steady as I took the microphone. "Thank you, Marcus. I know this comes as a shock to most of you. When I founded Horizon 6 years ago, I made a strategic decision to remain in the background. As a woman in tech, I'd experienced firsthand how female founders are often underestimated or dismissed. Having Marcus as the public face allowed me to focus on building our platform without fighting those battles daily. I scanned the room, meeting the wide eyes and surprised expressions of my employees. That decision served its purpose, but it's time for a change. Starting today, I'm stepping into my rightful role as CEO of Horizon Technologies. The questions came fast after that. Yes, I'd developed the original algorithm. No, nothing would fundamentally change in our operations. Yes, the recent terminations were my decision based on professional conduct concerns. No, I wouldn't discuss specific personnel matters. By afternoon, industry publications had picked up the story. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, texts, from friends who'd seen the news, emails from business contacts expressing surprise, and increasingly hostile messages from David. "You've made yourself a target. Good luck dealing with the sexist tech bros now." Was any part of our marriage real, or was I just another pawn in your game? "At least admit you fired me out of spite. This was personal, not professional." I blocked his number. That evening, I returned to an empty house and a legal notice. David was challenging the termination and threatening to expose what he called my deception to shareholders. It was a desperate move from a man who'd been blindsided, but I couldn't afford to ignore it. I called my attorney, Claire, who'd been with me since Horizon's beginning and was one of the few who knew the truth. "He doesn't have a case," she assured me after I forwarded the notice. "The termination was properly documented, and your ownership arrangement isn't illegal. Unusual, yes, but not actionable. As for shareholders, they care about returns, not whether the CEO has a Y chromosome. He's angry, Claire, and humiliated. That makes him dangerous. Which is exactly why we included those specific clauses in your prenup. If he pursues this, the confidentiality provision kicks in. He'd be violating the terms. I'd insisted on the unusual prenup terms. If either party publicly disparaged the other, significant financial penalties would apply. David had laughed it off as my paranoia and signed without much scrutiny. Now it would be his undoing if he continued lashing out. "Document everything," Claire advised. "Each threat, each attempt at contact. We'll handle this. The next morning, I woke to discover David had emptied our joint checking account, the only account he had access to. It contained less than $50,000, a fraction of my net worth, but his pettiness stung nonetheless. I was in my home office, transferring funds to cover upcoming automatic payments, when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Brett, David's closest friend from the poker group, shifting nervously on my porch. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Brett," I said coolly, "I'm surprised to see you here." "Megan, He looked, terrible, unshaven, and hollow-eyed. "Can I talk to you, please?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in the kitchen, the scene of so many gatherings where I'd played the dutiful hostess while they'd all looked through me. "David's spiraling," Brett said, after declining my offer of coffee. "He's staying at my place, drinking too much, talking about lawsuits and revenge." "Is that supposed to make me feel guilty?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "You were all there Saturday night. You all laughed when he mocked me. Brett had the decency to look ashamed. "I know. It was wrong. But I'm not here about that. I'm here because—" He took a deep breath. "David mentioned accessing company servers remotely. He's still got his login credentials." My blood ran cold. "What exactly did he say?" "He was drunk, rambling about having insurance, about making you regret what you'd done. I don't know what he's planning, but it didn't sound good." I was already reaching for my phone, texting our head of IT security. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Brett while typing. "Why betray your friend?" "Because I have a daughter," he said simply. "She's studying computer science at MIT, wants to found a tech company someday. When I told her what happened, you fired us. She asked what we'd done. When I explained—" He shook his head. The disappointment in her eyes. "She asked how I'd feel if someone talked about her the way we talked about you." The admission hung in the air between us. "That doesn't change what happened," I said finally, "or the consequences. I know. I'm not asking for my job back. I deserved to be fired. But I couldn't sit by and let David do something that might hurt a lot more people than just you. Horizon employs hundreds of people. My daughter made me see that." After Brett left, I initiated emergency security protocols. All access credentials were reset, additional monitoring implemented, and an audit of recent system activities launched. If David attempted anything, we'd be ready. What I wasn't ready for was the email that arrived that evening from an anonymous account. The subject line read, "Before you were Megan Reynolds." The body contained just one line: "How much is your secret worth to you?" Attached was a photo I hadn't seen in over a decade, a mugshot of a disheveled young woman with hollow eyes and track marks on her arms. Me at 19, after an arrest for drug possession. My past had finally caught up with me. Few people knew about that chapter of my life. I'd been young, struggling with addiction after my parents' deaths. The charges were eventually dismissed through a diversion program, and the records sealed as a juvenile offense. I'd worked relentlessly to rebuild my life, putting myself through college, staying clean, and eventually founding Horizon. I'd told David about my addiction history early in our relationship. It was too important to hide, but I'd never mentioned the arrest. I'd never shown him photos from that time. So how had he found it? My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Megan." David's voice was eerily calm. "Did you get my email?" "How did you get that? Photo?" I demanded, pulse racing. "You're not the only one with secrets. I have a friend in law enforcement who owed me a favor. Sealed records aren't as sealed as you might think." "What do you want?" "Simple. Reinstate me and the others with back pay and a public apology claiming, 'It was all a misunderstanding. In exchange, your mugshot stays private.'" I gripped the phone tighter. You're blackmailing me with a juvenile offense from 15 years ago? That's your plan? Tech investors are a conservative bunch, he said smoothly. How do you think they'll react to discovering their wunderkind CEO has a drug arrest in her past? That she hid her identity for years? The stock will plummet before. You can say, damage control. My mind raced, calculating angles, outcomes, risks. You'd destroy a $3 billion company out of spite? No, you'd destroy it by refusing a simple request. I need time to think. You have until midnight tomorrow, he said before hanging up. I sat motionless, staring at the email with its damning attachment. The girl in that photo seemed like someone from another lifetime, desperate, lost, broken. I'd buried her so deeply I sometimes forgot she'd ever existed. Now, David was threatening to resurrect her, to let her destroy everything I'd built. But as the initial shock wore off, something else took its place. A cold, clear anger that crystallized into resolution. I'd spent too many years hiding my achievements behind Marcus, my ownership of Horizon, my past mistakes behind a carefully constructed facade. The exhaustion of all that concealment suddenly outweighed my fear of exposure. I opened my laptop and began to write. Not the capitulation David expected, but something else entirely. My story, in my own words. The addiction after losing my parents, the arrest, the rock bottom, the climb back, the founding of Horizon, the decision to remain anonymous. All of it unvarnished and honest. By morning, I had a draft. I sent it to Marcus, Claire, and Patricia from HR with a simple question. Too risky? Their responses came quickly. Marcus, brave as hell. I'm with you either way. Claire, legally sound. He can't blackmail you with information you've made public. Patricia, from an HR perspective, this is a strong move. It humanizes you and gets Mike ahead of any potential scandal. I made a few revisions, then scheduled a company-wide email for 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before David's deadline. Then I called an emergency board meeting for that afternoon. The board members, still reeling from the revelation of my true role, listened in stunned silence as I laid out the situation. I didn't name David explicitly, but made it clear that someone was attempting to blackmail me using a sealed juvenile record. I intend to get ahead of this, I concluded, by sharing my full story myself. I've spent too long hiding different parts of who I am. I won't do it anymore. After a tense discussion, they agreed, with the caveat that our PR team prepare for potential fallout. At 11:59, I hit send on the company-wide email titled, The Complete Truth About Megan Reynolds. Simultaneously, an edited version went live, on our company blog and my newly created social media accounts. At midnight, my phone rang. David, right on schedule. Time's up, he said. What's your decision? Check your email, I replied. And the company website, and probably Twitter by now. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. You're bluffing, he finally said. But uncertainty had crept into his voice. Google my name and addiction recovery in about 5 minutes. The story's already being picked up. You can't blackmail me with information I've made public, David. You have no leverage. You're insane, he hissed. You've just destroyed your reputation to spite me. No, I corrected him. I've reclaimed my story. There's a difference. You should understand that, given how much you enjoyed recounting your version of our marriage to your friends. I hung up, blocked his number permanently, and turned off my phone. Whatever came next, I would face it as my complete self. No more hiding, no more facades, no more shame. I slept soundly for the first time in days. I woke to my phone vibrating incessantly across my nightstand. Sunlight streamed through curtains I hadn't bothered to close, and for a disorienting moment, I wondered why David hadn't shut them before coming to bed. Then reality crashed back. There was no more David, no more marriage, and I just publicly revealed my darkest secrets to the world. With a deep breath, I picked up my phone. Over 300 notifications, emails, texts, social media alerts, news alerts mentioning my name. I scrolled through them, bracing for catastrophe, but found something unexpected instead. Support. Overwhelmingly, surprisingly, support. A text from Marcus. CNN wants an interview. So does Forbes, Fortune, and basically every tech publication on the planet. You've started something big. From Patricia in HR. The office is buzzing. People are inspired, Megan. They're proud to work for you. From Claire. David's lawyer called. They're withdrawing all threats and seeking an amicable divorce settlement. Turns out, blackmailers don't like sunlight. Most surprising were the emails from employees, dozens of them, sharing their own stories of addiction, recovery, mental health struggles, and personal reinvention. People who'd never spoken to me before were suddenly reaching out, seeing me not just as their boss, but as someone who understood struggle and redemption. I made coffee and sat on my patio, trying to process this unexpected turn. My phone rang. Marcus again. Have you seen the stock price? He asked without preamble. My stomach dropped. How bad is it? Bad. Megan, we're up 12% since market open. Your story is resonating. You're trending on every platform. Horizon honesty is a thing now. That's not what I expected, I admitted. The narrative is shifting from tech CEO hid drug past to founder overcame addiction to build billion-dollar company. The media loves a redemption story even more than they love a scandal. I spent the morning responding to messages and preparing for an emergency all-hands meeting. By the time I arrived at the office, someone had placed a hand-lettered sign in the lobby. Authenticity is our new core value. It nearly brought me to tears. The meeting itself was unlike any I'd experienced in my professional life. I spoke candidly about my journey and the events of the past week. No corporate jargon, no rehearsed statements, just honest communication. When I opened the floor for questions, hands shot up everywhere. Why did you really fire those 5 employees? Someone finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. I considered my words carefully. I heard them engaging in conversation that demonstrated values incompatible with the culture we're building. I won't share specifics out of respect for privacy, but I will say this. How we talk about others when we think they can't hear us reveals our true character. Another employee raised her hand. One of those fired was your husband, wasn't it? Is that why you've been anonymous all this time? My relationship with David began after I chose anonymity, but it certainly complicated things, I acknowledged. And yes, our marriage is ending concurrently with his termination. Though the two events have different catalysts, the questions continued. Some professional, some surprisingly personal. I answered as honestly as I could without vilifying David publicly. By the end, there was a palpable sense of collective purpose in the room. As people filed out, Patricia approached me. That went well, she said. But I should warn you, there's a visitor waiting in your office. Brett Harding, he was quite insistent. I found Brett standing awkwardly by the window, staring out at the city skyline. He turned when I entered. Thank you for seeing me, he said. I wasn't sure you would. You helped me avoid a potential security breach. That earned you 5 minutes. I sat behind my desk, maintaining professional distance. Brett nodded. Fair enough. I'll be direct then. I'm not here about my job. That ship has sailed. I'm here about Jessica. David's assistant? What? About her? She's been trying to reach you. David convinced her to give him access to company servers using her credentials after his were disabled. She's afraid to come forward because she could face legal consequences, but she wants to make it right. I leaned forward. Is that how he got into sealed court records? Through company resources? Brett shook his head. No, that was his police friend. But he used Jessica's access to download client lists, proprietary code, financial projections, everything he thought might be valuable, to your competitors. My blood ran cold. Has he released anything? Not yet. He was planning to, but after your announcement last night, Brett shrugged. It knocked the wind out of him. Still, Jessica is terrified. She made a mistake and wants to fix it. I considered this information. Corporate espionage was serious, potentially criminal. Both David and Jessica could face charges, but prosecuting them would drag Horizon into a messy public legal battle just when we were gaining positive momentum. Tell Jessica to come in this afternoon. If she cooperates fully with our security team to understand exactly what was compromised, I won't press charges against her. And David? I felt a flicker of the rage that had fueled me days earlier, but it was tempered now by something else. Weary determination to move forward rather than remain mired in conflict. That depends on what he does with the information he stole. If he returns or destroys it all, verifiably, I'll consider the matter closed. If not, I shrugged. Claire has a team of very aggressive attorneys. Brett nodded and turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for what we said that night, but for never seeing who you really were all those times we were in your home. We were blind, and worse, we didn't want to see. After he left, I sat contemplating how quickly life could transform. A week ago, I'd been a wife playing the role of supportive spouse, a CEO hiding behind a male face, a recovered addict concealing my past. Now all those masks had been stripped away, leaving me exposed but somehow freer than I'd been in years. Jessica arrived that afternoon, pale and nervous, clutching a thumb drive. Everything he took is here, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Ms. Reynolds. He said it was just insurance, that he'd never actually use it. I should have known better. I had her work with our security team to verify the data and ensure nothing had been distributed. By evening, we confirmed the breach had been contained, a significant relief. As promised, I didn't pursue legal action against her, though she resigned anyway, too embarrassed to stay. Days passed in a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and strategic planning. The story of Horizon's unusual founding and my personal journey became a media sensation that drove unexpected business growth. Applications to work at the company tripled. Investors who might have balked at my past were silenced by the soaring stock price. Through it all, David remained silent. Claire handled divorce proceedings with clinical efficiency. The prenup held firm despite his initial challenges, and with the blackmail attempt neutralized, he had little leverage. I found myself almost pitying him. Almost, but not quite. 3. Weeks after the poker night that had changed everything, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Megan. I've had time to reflect on my actions and their consequences. While part of me still feels betrayed by your secrecy during our marriage, I recognize that my behavior was inexcusable. The things I said that night were cruel and untrue, spoken from a place of insecurity I hadn't acknowledged even to myself. I've accepted a position in our Seattle office, not at Horizon, obviously. I believe distance will be healing for us both. All company data has been destroyed, and I've signed the divorce agreement without further contest. I realize now that I never truly knew you, perhaps because I never truly wanted to. The woman I glimpsed in your media appearances these past weeks, confident, resilient, unapologetically herself, bears little resemblance to the carefully curated version you showed me. I wonder if I would have loved that real version more or less than the illusion. I suppose we'll never know. Take care of yourself. David. I read it twice, searching for hidden barbs or manipulation, but found only resignation and a hint of regret. I filed the letter with my divorce papers. Another chapter closed. 6 months later, I stood at a podium accepting an industry award for leadership in corporate transparency. The audience applauded as I shared how Horizon had implemented new initiatives supporting addiction recovery and mental health. The company was thriving, our culture stronger than ever. As I looked out over the crowd, I spotted a familiar face near the back. Brett, attending with his daughter, the MIT student. They'd both joined a mentorship program I'd started for young women in tech. His eyes met mine and he gave a small, respectful nod. Not friendship exactly, but acknowledgement of how far we'd all come. Later that evening, as my car pulled away from the venue, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Bloomberg just valued us at $4.2 billion. Not bad for a company run by someone who doesn't have a job, huh? I laughed out loud, startling my driver. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from being mocked for not working to being celebrated as one of the most powerful women in tech. All because I'd finally stopped hiding. My house came into view as we turned onto my street. My house, not ours. I'd considered selling it after the divorce, starting fresh somewhere without memories. But I'd decided against it. This was my space, now transformed by my choices, redefined by my truth. I'd removed the poker table from the deck and replaced it with a meditation area. The formal dining room where I'd hosted his business dinners was now a home office where I sometimes took video calls in sweatpants. The kitchen remained largely unchanged. I'd always loved cooking, regardless of who I was cooking for. As I paid the driver and walked up my front path, I felt a profound sense of homecoming, not to the building itself, but to the woman who lived there, the woman who no longer needed anyone else's validation or approval, the woman who had built a life, a company, and a legacy entirely her own. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, kicking off my heels in the entryway. Something David had always hated. The house welcomed me with quiet solitude, no longer echoing. With pretense or performative contentment, tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new growth. Horizon was expanding internationally. Our platform was evolving. My public role was still taking shape. There would be critics and skeptics and those who would never forgive my past or approve of my methods. But tonight, in the stillness of a home that was finally, truly mine, none of that mattered. I was exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do, being exactly who I was meant to be. No more masks, no more hiding, no more apologies. Just me, unemployed housewife, tech mogul, recovered addict, work in progress, claiming my place in the world on my own terms. And that, I realized as I poured myself a well-deserved glass of wine, was the sweetest victory of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.